This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Were it not for each approaching New Year, we would seldom be reminded of the immediate past. Yet remembering is an exercise worth doing as we brace for where we might be heading. We'll be looking at some of the past year's top news in several categories, including crime, politics, and business, as well as a few wild card stories. Plus, we will make some guesses about the next year. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Missy Wilkinson, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, Robert Collins, political analyst, Fox 8 News and Verité News, and Kimberley Singletary, editor, Biz New Orleans. We go over to Missy first because crime is certainly always, at the top of the list of important things, and there were a number of crime stories that you had to cover this year. So with each of you guys, you all have made a list of what you really see as being the most significant and important stories of the year in those respective categories, and Missy's going to head it off in crime. So what is it that you see?
So I think that the number 5 biggest story was concealed permitless carry passing in Louisiana. So this is pretty widespread across the country about states have this as law, constitutional carry, but it came to Louisiana on August 1st, and it really shook things up in the French Quarter because the combination of firearms and 24/7 readily available booze put some people on edge, including our police chief, our district attorney, and so we saw a lot of pushback from them to our Louisiana attorney general in terms of whether this was the best outcome. Right. And there were efforts to create a carve-out in that downtown entertainment district that would exempt them from permitless concealed carry. That was unsuccessful, however.
And so how are we seeing that really impact crime rates here? Are they seeing an uptick in gun violations with it?
Well, it's hard to say. It's only been around for a few months. I will say that gun violence is up in the 8th district, but it's difficult to say that's a causal relationship. So I think we're going to have to kind of wait and see how things play out. Yeah. I know that there's still going to be some effort to continue working towards a carve-out. We're going to have a school going back in the French Quarter, so there will be a no firearm zone when that school opens its doors. But it's still a point of contention.
So coming up second on your list, still, certainly related to guns, is mass shootings.
Yeah. We saw a pretty upsetting and disturbing trend this past month of mass shootings, which we define, we're using the Gun Violence Archives definition, 4 or more people injured, not including the shooter. So we saw several of those happen over the last month. We also saw in April a mass shooting at Republic that injured more than 10 people and is still unsolved. And so the alarming part of this trend is the fact that these shooters are opening fire with such impunity in crowded public areas where celebrations are happening. Nightclubs, second lines, the French Quarter. It's a really disturbing trend.
It definitely is. Okay, let's go on continuing with our list. Number 3, if we can bring that up right now, and that is Vappy indicted and Cantrell sued. Tell us more about that one.
Yes, so we had these alleged shenanigans, kind of broiling between Mayor Cantrell and her preferred bodyguard, Jeffrey Vappy. They'd been going for a few years. There had been an internal probe by the NOPD that was half-baked and that they got kind of wrapped by federal monitors saying they weren't complying with the consent decree, and finally came to a head because of some observations of those two dining in public on a balcony and drinking. And it turned out Vappy was on the clock. He allegedly was on the clock according to these investigations, and he's now, been indicted on wire fraud and also lying.
And then the second part of this on your list, was that Cantrell sued?
Yeah, so she also was sued by a civilian in connection with that. So the woman who photographed her on that balcony, Ann Bro, took those pictures and filed the complaint, which led to this probe. And Cantrell, in what Bro is alleging was retaliatory, slapped her with a restraining order that was unconstitutional, was struck down by a judge, and now Anbro is suing Cantrell for $500,000.
Okay, certainly that was a big story over the year too. Okay, number 2, violent crime continues to plummet. I mean, we've just been talking about mass shootings, and it has been really kind of busy in terms of violent crimes the past couple of years, but overall, not necessarily the case.
Right. We are still overall having a strong downward trend in crime, both locally and nationally. So in 2022, New Orleans had a terrible year, murder capital. Crime began plummeting in 2023, and it is continuing to plummet at what data analysts are calling a historic pace. So right now, our murders are down about 36% compared to this time last year. Overall, all categories of crime are down about 25% in New Orleans.
And so the top of your list, let's go on down to number 1. Going up to number 1, I should say, DOJ and OPD consent decree. Where are we now with that?
Well, we're not out from the consent decree, but an exit is closer than ever. For the first time this year, the New Orleans Police Department and the Department of Justice agreed that, yeah, the New Orleans Police is largely policing constitutionally, and an exit is potentially in sight if the judge rules on their joint order and grants it to to enter the sustainment period, which will last for 2 years, and then they'll be good to go, good to police themselves.
So are we close to
Hopefully.
that? I mean, there was a hearing recently. I mean, are we close to it at all?
So that's a really polarizing question. This was a public hearing that happened last week, and the judge hasn't ruled on it, but everybody came out and weighed in. And some people feel like we're there, that the NOPD has shown amazing reforms and has revamped just about every area of its policies, and is a truly transformed force. Other people feel that there are still so many remaining issues. They do not feel safe having this department police itself.
But as you said, there is a sustainment period of, what, 2 years? So the oversight will continue.
Right, that would be the plan. It would be a 2-year period where there would be less oversight, fewer audits, still a few remaining punch list tasks to complete. Not a complete exit, it's like a training wheel period.
Missy, do you hear anything about how the people feel about the governor's involvement with crime? How do the people in the police department feel about that?
That's a good question. I think it depends on who you ask. I know a lot of people are really thrilled that Troop NOLA is here. Across the board, I'm hearing positive things and gratitude that the governor sent LSP here. I think there are probably some people who would like the involvement to be a little bit less, to allow the city of New Orleans to have more sovereignty, but I think it would depend on who you ask.
Are they being effective? Do you hear anything? Or?
Yeah, from what I hear, they're being incredibly effective. They've brought some really fresh strategies to the French Quarter in particular in the wake of the permitless gun carry passing. They're using surveillance and technology in very innovative ways, and they're assisting NOPD all the time and making some big arrests.
And I know that you noted also, as a special mention, the rats were all high. I mean, that is certainly a quote that everybody in this community remembers because it gave us a guffaw.
Yes, it gave us a guffaw. It gave us a mascot, thanks to the chief's famous utterance. And it also gave NOPD, in some ways, new headquarters, because this conversation came up because that's what Chief Ann Kirkpatrick was talking about, that their current headquarters were infested with rats, their evidence rooms was infested with rats, and the rats were eating their evidence, getting high. And now they've got
marijuana, yeah.
Yeah, they've got shiny new headquarters now. So thanks, rats.
So the rats have had to straighten out then. Okay, all right, thanks a lot, Missy. Robert, over to you, because we're going to talk about politics now, which, you know, politics is a real thing here. It's almost a sport. There's always a lot to talk about. So what do we have on your list?
Well, so my fifth top story of the year is the state legislature finally passing major tax reform. And so, of course, in this tax reform package, in the new structure, we are lowering the taxes on individuals, lowering income taxes, we are lowering corporate and business taxes, and we are making up for the shortfall by raising sales tax and also taxing some things that were never taxed before, like digital goods and services and things like that, so people will see their digital subscriptions go up, et cetera.
Yeah, so, I mean, this reform did happen. The governor didn't get everything that he wanted when he started out with that special session, which was taxing some services, et cetera. But this is still an accomplishment because, you know, any kind of reform, tax reform is really a major accomplishment.
Well, here's the main political impact of this. It proves that this governor can do big things. Some people were saying the governor can't do big things because remember when the governor tried to call a constitutional convention, he could not get the votes in the legislature. And so people say, oh, well, you know, the governor couldn't get the votes in the legislature. He's not going to be able to do major structural changes. You know, his Republican floor leaders in the legislature are going to rebel against him. But he showed with this major tax reform package that yes, he can do big things. He can do big structures. So who knows? Maybe next year he might try to call another constitutional convention to get his constitutional reforms that he wants through.
And the legislators were in Baton Rouge a lot this year,
yes,
too. Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of different
special sessions. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to number 4 on your list.
Okay, so 4 is the governor expanded the use of the state police in in New Orleans, like Missy talked about, and I think the political significance here is that if you study governors historically, they really don't like to interfere in affairs of the city of New Orleans. They really leave that to the mayor and the city council of New Orleans. Some historians have told me to see a governor take this much interest in the city of New Orleans, you'd probably have to go back to Huey Long.
Yeah.
You know, Huey Long took a lot of interest in New Orleans, and to the extent that him and the governor him and the mayor of New Orleans at the time were always at odds. You know, and the mayor at the time accused him of, you know, trying to take over the city, and he was afraid he was going to get invaded by, you know, National Guard, et cetera. So I think the significance there, because remember, we see high-profile Troop NOLA. You know, what I think really brought everything to a head was during the Taylor Swift concert when the governor spearheaded clearing out the homeless encampments under the highway, which he did without checking with the mayor or the city council, anyone. And as you know, a lot of the city council members were upset by that because they had their own homeless plan. And the governor said, no, we're just, you know, we have Taylor Swift's fans coming into town, looks bad for the city. We're going to clear these encampments out.
And then the next item on your list, the governor had some thoughts on that too.
Sure. So the Sewage and Water Board and energy infrastructure failures are, important to the citizens because, if you look at polling, the citizens have basically lost confidence with both of these utilities because now we're seeing not only boil water advisories and power outages during hurricanes, which we're used to, now we're seeing them just year round, sometimes for no reason. There was a Mylar balloon that caused the power outage. Of course, we had the terrible accident with the Sewage and Water Board where we actually had a Sewage and Water Board worker get seriously injured. So the governor says I'm sure if the governor had his way, he would basically take over the Sewage and Water Board and appoint his own people. Now, obviously, the legislature has not gone along with him on that, but I think he's probably going to try some sort of, in the future, the governor will come back and try and get some sort of reform passed where he has some sort of influence over the Sewage and Water Board.
So he hasn't forgotten about that one.
He hasn't forgotten about it at all. I mean, and I'm sure it's because he's getting, he's looking at the poll numbers and he's seeing that these two utilities are, that they have lost public confidence, and so they're kind of an easy target for him.
All righty, next on your list.
Okay, and so insurance rates have spiked. Now, we had a session of the legislature where the legislature basically gave the insurance companies what they wanted. They wanted consumer protections removed. They wanted it to be easier to cancel people's policies, to remove people off their policies, because they said it would be better for the free market. If we don't have these consumer protections, if we can remove people that are high in high risk areas that are repetitive flood risk, we can remove them off their policy and cancel their policy. It'll help the free market, and we can lower the rates for everybody. Well, that hasn't happened. Okay, that has not happened. We see an insurance crisis happening in the state right now, where I talk to a lot of the homeowners that live around me, and their mortgage and their monthly insurance payments are starting to exceed their mortgages, and that's a very serious situation. Because what we're doing is we're basically pricing homeownership not just out of the range of the working class, but of the middle class now.
And it's just an ongoing problem, that's for sure. The last item on your list.
Yeah, and so the final item is the federal investigations of Mayor Cantrell into City Hall, and so here's the issue. You know, every media person in the city basically thought the mayor was going to get indicted before the end of the year. Literally everyone, and that's why you saw, you know, during grand jury day and grand jury Fridays, you saw all the media people down there. The fact that she has not been indicted yet is a surprise to everyone. Now, of course, she still might be indicted. We don't know. The U.S. attorney doesn't tip his hand. Right. But the problem coming in is we're about to get a new U.S. attorney because we have a new president, and so we'll see what new U.S. attorney.
Special mention quickly for you.
Okay, a special mention is if you look in the current, the most recent UNO Quality of Life survey, there's only one public official in the city of New Orleans that is getting a positive favorable rating over 50%. It's certainly not the mayor. Hers is in 30%. It's not the DA. It's not the city council. It is the chief of police, Ann Kirkpatrick. So she is actually the most popular public official in the city right now, and it's because she's getting credit for the reduction in crime. The mayor gets no credit from the population on that.
All right, thanks a lot, Robert. Now we go over to you, Cam, and let's take a look at business in the area. What's on your list? What heads your list?
Excuse me. Number 5 on my list is Caesars, is the transformation there. So Harrah's, New Orleans, is a huge staple of our downtown area and has been for 25 years, celebrated 25 years this year. October 22nd, we finally finished this huge renovation. So it started out as a cost of $325 million, rose to $435 million because of all the costs that went up and the pandemic and everything. But that finally happened, and there was finally the big celebration on October 22nd. And that's just a really transformative project for our downtown.
It's supposedly transformative inside, too. You go take a look at it. It's a different looking casino.
It's amazing. And of course, you have like our first Nobu restaurant, which got a lot of attention. You've got over 800, right around 800 hotel rooms. It's just, it'll be massive and very busy.
And then you take a look next now at the Port Nola.
Yes. So the Louisiana International Terminal project in Violet has gotten a lot of attention, the $1.8 billion project. It also got a lot of funding this year, talking about right around $500 million in funding, a lot of that state, federal. So that is very much on its way. It is going to supposedly bring 18,000 jobs, $1.1 billion in tax revenue by 2050. So really big project looking forward to.
There is certainly still substantial opposition to it, too.
There is.
There in St. Bernard.
Yes.
Not everybody is pleased with the idea of having it running through their neighborhood.
No, and it's a very, very big project, and that's partly why you're coming off of 4 interstates, 6 Class 1 rails. It's a big area there that they can use, but there's also people living there. So.
That's right. And Port Nola says that this is important for us to be competitive.
Yes, it is, especially with areas like Houston and Mississippi and stuff.
And Mobile and stuff.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next one on your list.
So third one is the energy sector boom, which is just, there's been so much happening on that it's hard to even touch that. But one of the biggest pieces of news was that Louisiana got the largest, most competitive grant ever from the U.S. National Science Foundation. It could mean about $160 million over the next 10 years. This is focused on energy innovation, on biofuels, on all of this stuff that's going on.
And so manufacturing also is a part of that too, because for the turbines, for the wind turbines, the blades are being manufactured around here. So there is really a lot of focus on alternative energy sources for the state of Louisiana.
Yes, we had a $500 million facility, a Japanese company coming in. They're going to do the first U.S. manufacturing facility of lithium-ion battery ingredients. That's here in Jefferson Parish. $1.35 billion facility at the Port of South Louisiana from Woodland Biofuels. That's going to be one of the world's largest renewable biofuels production facilities. So lots of groundbreaking projects that are happening here on the energy sector.
Yeah, it's really exciting about what that future could bring for us.
Yes.
With economic impact, not to mention, cleaner sources of fuel. Alrighty, next, Taylor Swift.
The next one's super fun, and of course everybody knows that Taylor Swift came to town. You might not realize how big of an impact that was on area businesses. Pretty much everybody downtown had something going on that was Taylor Swift related, trying to capture on this. It is, her tour has been the highest grossing concert tour in history. Came here for 3 days, made on estimates of like $500 million. Just a huge boon to the economy here.
Because it was 2 days of concerts, but it was really a week's worth of excitement and focus, and people downtown, in pink and having a wonderful time.
Oh yeah, I mean, Southwest Airlines added 4 flights from different cities just to bring people here, and then on the trip home, that Sunday of that weekend, was their busiest day ever.
Wow. I mean, that is really an amazing impact that woman has made on the industry and on our economy. Okay, last one for you.
Last one is also event related, and of course anybody could guess because that's what's coming up, is the big Super Bowl. So that is, we are tying 11th time hosting with Miami, which is pretty incredible. We are a fraction of the size of Miami, so it's a pretty neat thing to happen. But it's also going to hopefully benefit our city in a lot of different ways. There's over 200 local businesses that are involved trying, with getting contracts and things with all of this. About $3 million that's going to go to area nonprofits. And then, of course, all the infrastructure projects that you're seeing. Everything is under construction. We've got the lights on the bridge now. But that's about 500 infrastructure projects that are in the works here through multiple different avenues. And so it hopefully will benefit us. A lot of these things are saying they'll last for about 10 years. So all these street improvements and all these things that we're going to see.
Yeah, so a cleaner, brighter city, that's for sure. But it also is, amazing advertising for the city.
Oh, yeah. They're I've been told by Jay Cicero, head of the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation, that they're really going to focus on the history part of this, on New Orleans' history with the Super Bowl, and that it is this tie-breaking year. But we're talking about 6,000 media coming from all over the world. Over 123 million people watched last year's Super Bowl, breaking records. So hopefully we'll break them again this year.
Yeah, a really big focus on the city, that's for sure, and a lot of fun. And of course, that's happening right before the real Mardi Gras push. Busy time up ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kim. Okay, E, over to you. What you calling your wild card stories?
Yeah, these are the stories that don't necessarily fit in on the one category, but they should be mentioned somewhere. For example, every community always has this high-profile losses through death throughout the year, as we did too, and hesitate to try to mention all or any of them. But a few, I think when that was well known with Edgar Chase, who was the heir apparent in the Dookie Chase family, a beloved man, a really, really popular man, and just a big loss. One guy who wasn't so beloved, but for the right reasons, was James Gill, who was the acerbic political columnist at Picayune, and you didn't want to have him looking close at you, but his writing and his style and his sassy writing will really be missed. And there have been many times there's been something going on, I've thought, gee, I wish James Gill could be writing about this. And then Joe Yeager, who's a very controversial businessman who had a lot of projects that were going on. So it continues. And number 4 on the list is what I call the council takes the lead. There were several, there's always, with every mayor and council, there's always some banter back and forth and some disagreement. But there were a few cases where the council actually went head on head with the mayor, almost in defiance of the mayor. I think the whole thing with the apartment in the French Quarter and taking over that lease and essentially making her leave and telling her, give us the key and all that. I think that's a good example.
Yeah.
As recently as Friday, there was a story about one council member suggesting getting rid of the city attorney. And so there have been several examples of people in the administration when the council has said, we need to make a change. You don't hear it quite at that level. And there's been a lot of activity on the Jefferson Council this year too, but that's been more internal among the council members. Bumps in the road. Let me tell you, they're still there, all right? And they were in some roads where they shouldn't be. I was driving down St. Charles Avenue last night. Now, of all the roads in the city, this should be like a really pathway. It's really rough, plus it's dark, plus the street markings aren't good, plus some of the signage. Driving around New Orleans, especially at night, is tough. Okay, and when you hit those bumps, you get a blood. So we've still got a long way to go to that. The homeless strategies, we still see pockets of homelessness throughout the city. There was a bit of a splurge of activity before Taylor Swift came, what they were referring to, about trying to move them. I know some places in everyday life where I used to see a big congregation and somebody move them, but it's still a problem. It's a sad problem. It's a sad problem for those people. And it's still something that we haven't resolved. And then the other is a hospital, what I call a rapid pulse. A lot of activity in the hospitals. Oxnard keeps on growing and adding things. The Children's Hospital.
LCMC.
Yeah, LCMC is growing. Oxnard is adding a children's facility, so there's just a lot of activity. And of course, Oxnard also had that tie-in with MD Anderson on cancer. And for my special mention, I thought this was a great moment in New Orleans in music history. Mick Jagger and Irma Thomas sang together. That was just a classic moment that I think should always be remembered.
It was an amazing moment. I mean, having Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones at Jazz Fest was amazing enough. Really, really exciting. But having those two on stage together,
and they had kind of known each other because of that song, but they never really.
Time Is on My Side.
Yeah. They never really performed well. But I thought it was just a great moment for Jazz Fest in New Orleans.
Definitely. Well, and touching back to the road work around the city, yes. I mean, you definitely have to be careful because it is dark, and in a lot of spots at nighttime you can't see these crevasses really. I mean, they're big holes. However, there's a lot of road improvements that's going on too. And I know that's frustrating to people. Every Friday morning I go get my hair blown out uptown on Oak Street, and it's like sometimes going through a maze. You never know what is going to be open, but the positive side is the improvements. So overall, y'all have given your assessment of what has happened in this city over 2024. What are you thinking for 2025? What do you think are going to be the important stories in the respective areas that you just talked about? Missy, let's go to you first.
So for me, I'm keeping an eye on two things. The judge is ruling on January 8th on this motion to exit or to enter the sustainment period. I'm very eager to see what she decides. It's not an easy decision she has to make. And the other thing is regarding the Super Bowl, law enforcement strategy. How are we going to keep people safe, especially when we've seen this rash of shootings at large public events?
Yeah, very, very important. Robert, let's go to you.
2025 is a city election year. We have an open mayor's office. We will have at least a couple of vacant city council seats. I predict the mayor's race will be wild. There will be a lot of candidates, including some candidates that we haven't heard of yet and that we don't know about. And so it's just going to be a wild political year.
It definitely will be. Missy, so what you think is going to be coming up in 2025? The important thing to see.
Okay, so I mean, obviously.
I'm sorry, Kim.
No
I will
worries,
do that.
no worries. We're
That's
kind
why
of
you're
similar
staring at me.
here. Yeah, you put the two blondes together. It's confusing. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl, we're going to see, some kick from that. Hopefully some added tourism this year. But we also, not in our region, but up in the Northeast region, we're going to get that huge data center that they're starting at right now. So Facebook and Instagram's parent company, Meta, is doing a $10 billion project. It's going to be, they have over 20 of these around the world, but this is going to be the largest one.
Yeah, that really is pretty incredible. Be anxious to see what happens with that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Errol, yours.
The year's going to be the bicentennial of Jefferson Parish. And Jefferson, besides it being large and powerful, politically powerful, it's an interesting parish because it's really two parishes. There's the West Bank and the East Bank, and those are two different worlds. And within the West Bank, there's two divisions too. The lower part with the swamps and the and Grand Island and all that. And so there's a lot to behold in Jefferson Parish, and I hope there's a lot of study and analysis of it in the year.
And then we're going to take a special look at that too in the beginning of the year.
And also
too.
Lakeside Shopping Center is going to have a big anniversary too in the year.
That's
So
right,
it's going to be a
that's
big year for Jefferson.
Yeah, and also I want to remind people next week on Informed Sources, the end of the year, their end of the year show, we're going to bring back Walt Handel's Minute. It's now turned out to sort of be a tradition. It'll be the third time, so be sure to be on the lookout for that next Friday for Informed Sources. Meanwhile, I want to thank you guys for being here, and thank you all for watching, and we will see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.